Let's dive into the 10:30 session. I'm going to talk about understand the assignment. And I did want to play the song, but I'm not going to. I think this is something that I've been excited to talk about. We're going to get a little active in terms of you all somewhat participating in this session. And the idea is that I think especially in my world, a lot of times you wonder, what should I be doing, right? There's this big company, and where do I fit within it all? And I wanted to establish three things that we want to keep in mind as we go about our days. And if we let them stack on each other, I think it'll help us in terms of how we go about our specific professional career within Well and Good. So the first thing I want to establish is here in this beautiful visuals that we have today is our identity. So I'm going to dive right into the thought, and then we'll kind of let it expand. But within any, you can apply principles like this to your professional career. You can apply it to your personal life. You can apply it to anything along that lines, and I hope that you see yourself in this, right? So I wanted to talk about the identity of a teammate within Well and Good. So we all share the same identity as professionals, right? So what our identity is that we are teammates of Well and Good. So if you would, write on wherever you're writing on and put in a big thing, identity, right? So if you write down identity, and we'll list off some things that are identifying features of a Well and Good teammate. So you could put first thing is, maybe you're an employee, right? You are an employee of the company. You are a teammate, potentially. You are somebody who is part of the and family, let's say. Let's say that, and this should be pretty clear. You're somebody that operates within the core values, right? Everybody should operate within our core values. That is just our identity. That is us as a whole. So if we've gotten our identity established, and if you notice, I'm giving you these because the identity should be clear. See how this is clear. And thanks, Vic. Shout out. So the thing is the identity shouldn't really be in question. That's one of the things. A lot of times people question identity too much when they shouldn't, right? So let's say you get into a relationship, and sometimes you question all the times whether you're going to identify yourself as within that relationship, right? So you're constantly asking questions. You should answer one question that answers future questions, right? So I am a Well and Good teammate. Clear. It's done, right? Until you are no longer in that identity, that is your identity, and that part should not be as much in question. I operate within the core values of the company, right? That is an identity feature that we can all share. So we have the identity established, and that is important. I think that one of the things that we sometimes do too often is we let our identity always be in question. We're always questioning, should I change my whole entire life all the time? And it's like, I'm not against making changes in your life, absolutely. But on a day-to-day basis, it is oftentimes super unhealthy to be questioning whether I should be working at this organization every day, right? If you're questioning whether you should be every day, you probably haven't really been solidified in your identity. Land in that identity and be like, okay, I am this. This is what I am. For this time period within my life, I have chosen to identify with this company, and that part is solid. So we now can say that we have our identity. Within our identity comes these a little bit more specific roles. So these are the next word we're going to write down underneath the identity. The second thing is going to be our roles. So now here's what's interesting. First, your identity is singular. Your roles have a lot more nuance to them. First, there might be more than one role. So what I would like you all to start doing is writing down your roles. And I should specify not so much your title. So your role. My role is to lead the company, right? My role is to cast the vision for the organization. My role is to maintain the culture within the company. Those are my roles. So what I'd like for you all to do is write down what your role is. What do you feel like, in your own words, your role is? Not so much your title, your role. What do you do? What is the zoomed out? If you were to have to describe what you do in word format, what is it that you do? So somebody give me one of the things you've written down that is your role. Hit me.
Gold standard of Well and Good.
You're upholding a standard. So at a market, as a market leader, you're upholding the standard. Okay, perfect. Love that. Who else?
Finding solutions for clients.
You're finding solutions. Literally, in a definition of field solutions, you're looking for solutions. Okay, who else?
Client retention.
Your role is to retain our clients. Yep.
Making the department enjoyable for the team.
Okay, so your role would be like you're the leader of the department, so you're trying to cultivate an atmosphere of like we don't hate our jobs. Okay, I like that. Who else has got roles? Yeah.
Implementing vision in your markets.
Right, so the role is like you got to see things that don't exist already. That is a role, okay? Yeah.
Providing resources for the whole team and breaking down barriers.
Yep, breaking down barriers. So this gets into our roles. And here's what's interesting about the first thing that I mentioned is that our identity doesn't change. The fact is that sometimes our roles do. Sometimes the roles change, right? Where you take on a completely different role and what you were doing at one point is very different than what you were doing before, and that's okay. The other thing is there's more than one here. So there's more than one of these roles. Let's hear some more roles. Come on, everybody wrote something down. Yeah, go ahead.
Planning.
What?
Event planning.
Your role is to plan the events, right? What else?
Communication.
Your role is communication. Okay, so go deeper on that. Communicate to cleaners. Okay. Similar to maybe what Sean said about communicating the brand standards. Okay. Yeah.
Like one of my roles is helping the teammates to feel comfortable coming to me and helping them with their success.
Yep.
As well as just cleaners feeling like they have a voice to go to and that things need to be.
How did you write that down?
I wrote helping maintain success with teammates. And
Yep. Okay, so that's a good way to put it into word format. Yeah. Hit me. Your role is growth, right? So that could be a role is to grow your market, is that sense. Hit me with some more. Somebody that hasn't given one.
Keeping our employees paid.
Yeah, keeping people paid. That is your role. Shout out. Yeah. And my role is making sure that we have money to pay, right? And so like there is different, some of our roles touch off of each other's role, right? It's like if I was always doing Becky's role, it would be tough for me to be able to do my role super effectively. We have to lean on somebody else fully in their role. Somebody else that hasn't given one yet. Yeah.
Making sure homes are guest ready.
Yep, guest readiness. Your role is guest readiness within the home. Yeah. Somebody else that hasn't given one. We're probably all going to give one at some point, so hit me with the roles. You're on the supply side, okay. Yep.
Brand advocacy.
Brand advocacy, you gave one. I'm just kidding. Advocating for the brand. Yeah, Elizabeth.
Care rep.
You're a care rep. Okay, so that's a role that you've leaned into. Okay, perfect. So let's go 3 more that haven't given one. Roles. Yeah.
Provide my teams with support.
Supporting your team. Okay, I love that. Huge. Who else hasn't? Aaron?
Leading the inspectors.
What's that?
Leading the inspectors.
So you're leading the inspector. So like there's a lot of these are verbs, right? Providing, leading, all these kind of things, right? So that is, we've hit a lot of exactly what that feels like. It is oftentimes a verb. It is what you do, right? It is what you, is the kind of that doing thing. Somebody else, yeah?
Preparation support.
So you're supporting to prepare, similar to what we're doing right there, making sure that things are prepared, the backstocking, all that kind of thing, exactly. So yeah, Stephanie.
Mine I wrote down was future vision on hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make sure we're that next step ahead in order to keep our business.
Keeping the vision towards hospitality, always knowing. How many of you have dipped into Unreasonable Hospitality, the book? 3, 4, 5, not bad. Here's the thing. Catch up with me, you can't, right? I will read faster, I will go faster, I'll run ahead 1,000,000 miles, but I will say, and I don't read all the books. Nick, you read all of Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
I didn't. I got like 8 chapters, 9 chapters in, so it is everybody going at their own speed, but I will say, if you haven't listened to Unreasonable Hospitality, it's a game changer. It's a game changer for hospitality format. Oh, and by the way, we've got some announcements coming there. Soon it'll be very obvious as to who's read such things, because we're going to have little badges. Anyway, can we get one more role? One more role.
Training.
Your role is training your, whether it's cleaners or new folks, your role is training. Okay. So we've identified our roles. Okay. So now, within the roles, if you notice that the roles were within the identity, right? Within these roles, there are actual assignments. Rust-Oleum and nitrate gloves, right? So within this particular role, there's the word assignments. You could also put the word tasks, but I liked this because it was the song. So understanding the task, understanding the assignment. So now we get really granular, right? So we have the overall aspect of what our role is, but now let's start talking about actual things that are the very rubber meets the road, and I'm going to give you an example. For me, my role is to maintain the culture of the company, right? And to integrate myself with the people that are in the company, right? What that means is that within that role, I have to determine what my assignments are. Because in my position, there's not a lot of people telling me what my assignments are. I have to come up with them, right? So when I think about my role as the person who's guiding the culture and who's leading people, I have to think, well, the step one of that is I've got to be around people. I've got to be around the people in our organization. So what assignment does that lead me to? That leads me to saying I have to get on a plane and go to Colorado because I got to see the people that are there because that is the culture. That is the actual assignment within my role. So now let's start writing down specific tasks that you do that are within your role. So now like the very specific, and I want, because if we're going to say that our role is training, right? If our role is training, we have to say, okay, what is the actual task then that I do? I maybe contact the trainees and tell them what time they're going to be coming, right? Because that's part of my assignment that leads back to the role. So what I want us to do is have this framework guide what we do. Because oftentimes, sure, somebody's given you a task, but in this room, most of the time, it comes down to we are leading ourselves many times a day. Sure, an hour might be segmented for us to do this or et cetera, but like for the most part, your day-to-day task, if your job is, if the role is to fill and prepare the items within the facility, the task is moving that towel to the actual shelf that it should be on, right? That's the task. And how do you know what task to do? You have to be constantly thinking about your role, right? So if you're thinking about your role and looking at it in that format, you can start to understand the task. So I'm hoping you now have got a bunch of tasks that you do, and let's start talking about them. Who's got a task that they do? Go ahead.
Scheduling the cleaners.
You're right, so scheduling the cleaner. So if your job is to get the cleans done, right, then you have a task, and that task is to sit down and schedule those cleaners, okay? Who else?
Building stakeholder relationships and having conversations with those stakeholders on a regular basis.
Yeah, a lot of this is going to come down to one thing, and you guys are going to hear a theme. It's conversations, right? So if our role is growth, right, the only way to do that is to talk to somebody within that. Because we can sometimes sit here and say, our role is to grow, right? And you're sitting there and you're thinking, how can I grow? How can I do this and that? The best thing is you got to get to talk to somebody. So what else? Who else? Who's got a task? Go ahead, Chelsea.
Mine's kind of similar, having personal one-on-one relationships with everyone in the room.
Yeah, so establishing relationships, right? Which that establishing the relationship would actually be a role. The task would be reaching out to somebody, right? And scheduling that time and like literally saying, I'm going to contact this person today. The tasks and the assignments are driven within the role. So if I have, let's see, another role of mine is to grow the company, right? So yeah, let's see what else we got. Oh, I got the facial tissues, love that. The worst facial, yeah. These, I'm cool if they never go into properties ever again. These boxes, they're the worst. And by all means, don't put them in the living areas. These go in the bathrooms, in the bathrooms, in the bathrooms. We might have been wrong on that. There were times when we said the opposite. Of course. There were times when that model bed had a blue comforter on it too. So like things change, yo. Yeah.
Okay, I have a real serious opinion about this, a scientific fact about this. You put Kleenexes in the bathroom next to a toilet that's in that same vicinity, things spray 6 feet everywhere. They cover everything. That's why you keep your toothbrush covered if you're in the bathroom. You keep it in a drawer, you keep it out of that reach. So, the Kleenexes should be in bedrooms, living rooms, small areas, kind of discreet, but never in the bathroom. If you want to put something in there for like makeup removal, then put like cotton ball swabs or something like that, but never in the bathroom.
Well, so in the future, If you'd like to change the brand standard, you can talk to me,
Alternative set.
and we will talk about that. But as of right now, they go in the bathrooms. So I'm just saying, I know, I hear you. If you can't find a good spot that you feel like that has that, potentially in the bedroom with a nightstand or like a, there are acceptable alternatives, right? One of the things I would say is like, if there's nowhere else beside on the bathroom, one of the things I've seen and I don't like, to your point, is the aspect of like behind the toilet, on the thing of the toilet, when there's like the actual flush thing is on the top of the toilet, so it means you have to move those things to. If there's no room within the bathroom for that, like that means find an acceptable alternative. That's not a good spot for it. I agree with you on that sense, but I do think there are a lot of times places within the bathroom, shelving, linen area, like there's places within it that.
Scope creep on the meeting here.
Yeah, and we have just creeped away from the scope of the meeting. We have creeped. So we're back. Guys, we're back. We will talk about this again. And one thing is, there is elements. I know every one of us has opinions, right? That every one of us has opinions. Every one of us has, hey, we could stop that conversation. We'll go into another thing, right? We all have opinions, right? Scope creeping. Okay, so let's talk about, because we only have 11 minutes. Let's talk about our assignments. Who else is going? Yeah.
Going to home for anything that falls below the full and good standard and providing negative and positive feedback.
So providing feedback. So your assignment is actually, if you're an inspector, your assignment is actually to give that feedback. And it's like, I am doing this assignment because that is part of that role, and now the assignment is to give that feedback. Who else? Hit me. You're running payroll, right? So the clicking of the buttons is the assignment that leads back to making sure that everybody gets paid within the role.
Scheduling meetings with clients.
Scheduling meetings, okay, yep. Yeah, go ahead, Vic.
I wrote down finding the right person for what needs to be done.
Yeah. So sourcing, you could say like sourcing, making a call that is for the right person, whether that's getting a bid or something like that. Yes.
Updating work orders.
Yeah, changing, clicking the thing. What I want you all to think is when you're doing your tasks, when you're doing those things, you have to ask yourself, am I actively pursuing my role? Because that's the shift that we sometimes don't do. We don't think back to our role while we're completing the task. And this part is clear, right? This part should not always be in question, right? But the role should be. We should be thinking, what is my role? Why am I doing this task? Because if you don't have that, why am I doing this task, you probably don't know your role very well. And like, if you know your role, the tasks become so much clearer, and they also become so much more impactful. Like, you feel like what you're doing actually is on mission. So I wanted to put, like, the first thing that this is that the identity allows us to operate within our values, right? We operate within our values. The role allows us to operate within our role. It allows us to not step on other people's role. It allows us to know our role, know what we bring, know what we provide. The assignments allow us to operate on our mission, on our own mission, because you feel much more mission-orientated when you're thinking about your role. Those tasks that you complete become much more of like, that's a stepping stone. That's within this role. I've accepted this role. This role is mine, right? So now this task becomes mine, and now you're owning the task so much more. I wanted to talk about the active role of that. So if your role is to lead, a lot of us have a role in which we are leading, right? Here's the question is, how actively are we making assignments for ourselves to lead? How many times are we saying, like, I'm going to intentionally lead? Because sure, we could say I'm leading by definition, by the role I am leading, but we oftentimes don't have the actual assignments that fit that say, what is my active way to lead? My active way to lead is to think about my team and to think about who needs a reach out and who needs conversation. And that is so much more impactful than the simple role of leading, right? And you could have the same thing as, what if your role is to support? What if your role is that you are not the leader of your department, but your role is to actually support? How do you actively support? That's a great question. So like, one of the ways I could do it is like saying often to the people that are above me was, is there anything else? What else can I do? the person that's the absorber of work, the person that's like, what do you got next for me? What do you got next for me? That is the best way to support. And one of the things, I've had few jobs in my life in terms of where I've worked for people, but the ones that I've had, I felt like were super impactful to my life, as the ones that you all have are. They're super impactful. They're all impactful. But the thrift store job was one of the first ones. That thrift store job was a guy that I worked with, Doug Keeler, who had a insurance company, and his insurance company was very successful, and on the side he had a thrift store just for the community. Great guy, but one of the things that he was my boss, and I was 16 or so, and I remember so many times working with him, and I would be sitting there thinking, what does he want me to do? Like I became their personal assistant for everything. Like they were having me mow their grass, they're having to do this. I remember specifically one of the times he was working on his car and he was like fixing the oil or something like that, and I'm there and I'm assisting. My role is to support, right? That's my role, supporting him. And I remember sitting there and being like, okay, last time he asked me for the wrench, right? I bet he's about to ask me for the wrench again. I had that wrench in my hand and he looked at me, he's like, how'd you know that? And I was just like, dude, I'm living in your head, man. Like I am figuring out what it is that you want, and I know it before you want it. I'm so much in the head of my boss that like it's just like next thing, and he was blown away. And you could tell the story about how he's hired 50 people within my circle because of that, because he was like, there is somebody that was so actively supporting, right? Active support means my next task is all about supporting that person. And that is one of the most, I'd say, impactful assignments that you can have, is to be an active supporter. But a lot of times we just think that the active part only comes from the leading side, right? From the leadership roles. That's not true. The supporting roles have to be just as active. And it's that analogy of like, if you are going to be tied together, there is an element of both sides have to be participating. Otherwise, somebody's just dragging the other person along. The leadership dragging the supporters along. The reason why a lot of times is because the supporters haven't thought about their assignments as a supporter or as a teammate or as a person within the department. And so I wanted us to think about being active with whatever that is. So let's hear a couple more assignments that you all do. What are some things that specifically you do within your role that are assignments? Hit me. You could just go.
Leading a staff meeting.
Leading a staff meeting, right? Yeah, so you're setting the agenda for the staff meeting, you're preparing for the staff meeting because your role is to be a resource and an advocate for all that. Okay, who else?
Training.
You're training. So one of the things about training, we know what's the best way to train people. Face to face, eyeball to eyeball, get your faces in front of the faces of the people that are in your organization. I do this, right? I'm training, right? So I could do it all. I could do my entire job from that office if I wanted to. Truly, I could. In theory, I could fulfill my role, but I don't think I'd be very effective, right? It's about getting out, and sometimes you have to look and say, well, even though I may not want to do this assignment, the role demands it. The role demands it. If I said I'm going to be a leader of the culture, I'm going to be out there. I've got to be out there. That is the assignment that is given based off of the role, based off of the identity. It falls within that. And I want us to be thinking about the tasks that we do are so combined within our role. Who's got another one? Hit me if you haven't hit me with an assignment. You should have assignments written like great. There it is, uploading photos to Breezeway. Why do I upload photos to Breezeway? Because my role is to complete the task within the requirements, right? So if that was your role to be completing a task, your actual assignment would be taking that picture. And if you zoom out, I'm telling you, it's the way that I run my entire life because nobody's telling me what assignments to do. I don't have any. Now Catherine, I guess, tells me what my assignments are, but in terms of where I go, what I do, all that stuff, it is just driven so much by the roles that I've established. So that is what I wanted to kind of help as a brain exercise today is if we know our identity and we don't question this very much, we should then establish our roles. And that's usually more than one role is going to be happening. We should generally, all of us have many roles that we wear. So if we have the roles, we then can think within that role, what are my day-to-day assignments? And when you're doing, even if whether somebody gives you that, think through it in that sense. Whether you are the one that's creating the assignment or the task, or whether you're one that's being given that assignment or the task. Both sides are important for you to say, okay, that fits within this role that I've accepted. You've accepted the role, right? So now the assignment should feel like, yes, that is one step further to completing my role. That is how today I complete my role as a professional in the identity of a well and good teammate. So that's what I have for this very session, and I appreciate your attentiveness and your activeness, and that is it. We have lunch that's going to be served, and then, question, yeah?
Yeah, can you go back and identify like the identity, role, and assignment?
Okay, so I'll go quick.
For your position.
Yeah. Oh, for my position. My identity is that I am a well and good teammate. I operate within the core values, and I am an employee of the organization. Those are my identity factors. My roles are that I am the leader of the company. I am the vision caster. I am the person that is responsible primarily for the growth and the culture, right? So I could put growth, culture, all those in separate roles. And then my assignments are that I need to be talking to clients because I need to grow the company. I need to be talking to our teammates because I need to make sure the culture is right. I need to be thinking. Some of my assignments is just to do nothing, right? It's to say I need to think about what the next steps are for our company. Because if I am just actively going, my airplane modes are some of my best assignments. My assignment is to get on this plane and to shut my phone down and to actually just think, right? Because that's where a lot of the stuff comes from, is just you're assigning yourself things within your role, and a lot of times that could be an active assignment or a passive assignment. But either way, it is important to do.